Alright, hello YouTube. We have a 99 Road Glide here. Stock handlebars. We're about to take them off and put on these bigger bars here and some different grips. And so we're going to run you through that. The first thing we got to do is remove this windshield. It's quick release, so it pops right off. Then we have to remove the headlight ring. Pop the headlight off. So there's, see if I get around this bike here. So there's a single Phillips head here. Pop off the headlight ring in the visor. Will come off as an assembly. Then underneath that, there's a series of Phillips head bolts. Will pop off the headlight, which then we'll have to take off this trim piece here. And that's gonna, and then we'll pop off the ignition part here, and there's a couple screws here. We'll be able to take this centerpiece off of the bars, and that's how we're going to access to the perches. And of course the rest of the clusters and mirrors and everything else has to come off, but that's how we're going to start it. Windshield, the headlight ring, the headlight itself, the trim piece, pop off the ignition trim here, which just pops off with a screwdriver very lightly. Be careful and pry with that, and then a couple of screws there, and we'll pop this off. So when we get to that point, we'll show you. So now that we got the headlight off, I'll show you up here, the little nut right here, and way in the back, I don't know how well you can see, but there's another nut back there that we have to take off, and then those two are what holds this trim piece together. So we get those two nuts off, and take this trim piece off, and we're going to pop the ignition piece off. And there's a couple of Phillips heads in here, and that will remove this plate. So after you take the front nut off from the bottom side of this, and be careful with that, it's not tightly torqued, it's not a very hard torque, because basically where the nut goes on is part of that trim piece, so you could easily break that, so be careful taking that off. Then there's a Phillips head here with a nut underneath, and what I do is reach in with my hand and held the nut in the washer, and as I held pressure with that, unscrewed the bolt and then pulled the nut away. So now we're going to take off this ignition cover. If I can do this okay with one hand, and I'm just using a little flathead screwdriver. I'm going to pop it up. You can see that's just got a few tabs in it, and then we're going to remove these two Phillips heads and remove this. And then we have the hardware for the perches. So now at this point, we want to take that off until we get everything else off. So we're going to take apart the clusters here on both sides. We're going to loosen up the throttle cables so that there's plenty of slack inside the cables, so when we open this housing we can take the cables off. Inside here, let's see if I can focus. Aha, there you go. Inside here are little caps that hide the screws on both sides. So just take a little pick or something. You might even be able to reach in. I can grab this one with my finger and pull these little caps off. When you pull the cap off, you can see the Allen head inside there. So you got to pull all these 4 caps off to be able to get those bolts. So the way you loosen up your throttle slack, you have a lock nut and your adjuster. You're going to take this lock nut, back it all the way up. You do that on both cables, the push and the pull. So we want as much slack in here as we can. It's going to just make it that much easier to get the throttle cables off of the throttle tube. So back the nut all the way up. And take the main adjuster, back, drive that all the way back to the nut. And once you do that, you should have a bunch of play inside this throttle without it engaging in anything. That's just all free play now. So then we're going to go over, we have to do the same with the clutch cable basically. Take all the slack out of that so we can take it off. The clutch cable adjuster is right behind this boot, so you need to slide this boot off. Then you see the lock nut and the adjuster. So we gotta go get a couple of wrenches, the ones that fit it properly, and then we'll take this nut off, drive that nut all the way up here in the threads, and then this adjuster, we're gonna drive that all the way up, pull all the slack out of the clutch cable, and take that off. Actually, you know what? We may not actually have to do that. We just have to take this off, so we should actually be able to leave that connected. So I'm not even going to adjust that for now. When we take this housing off, we'll be able to let it flop down, and there's actually no need to remove the cable. Sorry for that. So to take off these perches, you're going to need a 3/16 Allen for these two, and that's going to pop off your clutch lever and cable and mirror assembly. Same thing on this side, 3/16. Going to pop off this in your brake master cylinder. When you take that off, you can notice I put this protective cover over the fuel tank here. This has got a hard wire here, or a hard line with a rubber hose here. What we're going to do is we're going to take that, when I take it off, and kind of fold it in on top of the tank and on top of this cover. You want to always keep this as much upright as you can. You don't want to let this flop down and hang over. It's probably going to leak out fluid, lose pressure, something like that. So I do have to check this gentleman's pressure on his bike. He was questioning his front brakes, so I may bleed them. They're a little soft, so I might bleed the brakes for him, see if that fixes it. If not, what happens sometimes with these brakes is the piston that's in the caliper will actually build up some corrosion. And if you take the calipers off and apply just a little pressure to the brakes and get them out, or you may have to even remove the pistons in the calipers and clean them up and reinstall them, then you'll regain pressure. But sometimes if there gets a little bit of some pits inside there or anything, if you clean them up, it'll be solid. So that might be an issue with this. I will look at that and we'll assess that later. But as of now, when you take that off, you want to keep it as upright as possible. You don't want it flopping upside down or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and remove both of those. Alright, so we removed the clutch perch and the mirror assembly, got that off. Removed the front master cylinder mirror assembly, and we got that off here, and you see I got it sitting on the top of the fuel tank. It's nice and sturdy here. Like I said, just slightly and carefully move that over, and now we're going to take off the left grip and cluster assembly and the cluster assembly on the right with the throttle. It's a T25 Torx up top here, and then right in the bottom, and the same thing here, T25 Torx right up here, and then one on the bottom here as well, right here. So we're going to remove those now and get that off. Alright, so we've taken off the left cluster. That grip just comes right off. These grips actually go into the housing, and when the housing gets clamped down, it holds the grip in place. A lot of other bikes out there, manufacturers actually glue that left grip on. Harley does not. It slips on and it clamps to the cluster. Then we took off the throttle side here. Very important, once again, to make sure that you take all the slack, or give as much all the slack as you can out of these cables, and they pop right off. One thing you have to be careful of, you can see that the cable ends are round balls. Well, these round balls sit into these little housings, and these go into the throttle grip. So these things might just want to fall off and come off when you take it apart. So just keep an eye on that so you don't drop these and lose them. They are pretty small. And that's it basically. That took everything off of the bars. One thing I didn't mention also is make sure you take off these little clips. They go up inside the bars here for the cables to keep them secure. So all we're going to do now is take off the perches here, remove the bars, put the new bars on, and reverse the process to put everything back together. So I have the bars set in, and just so you're aware, this is a 1/4-inch drive Allen head. So I got the big bars on. Basically I'm going to leave it as it is till the gentleman could come here and sit on the bike, make sure he likes the position of them. If he does not, we're going to adjust it to where he's comfortable and likes it. Then I'm going to tighten it down and basically just reverse the process, as I said, and put everything back together, and that's it. That's putting handlebars on a 99 Harley Road King. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. When I do have everything back together, I'll put a photo at the end. Thank you very much. Please like and subscribe. I just wanted to show you guys one more thing, because I'm just about done putting on these bars, and I also installed heated grips onto the bike. So I just wanted to show you these Show Chrome aftermarket heated grips, and so they come with, you know, the harness and everything to plug it in. And most of these aftermarket heated grips, they tell you in the instructions basically to wire them straight to the battery. I do not like to do that, because if you have straight to the battery and you always have that constant 12-volt power, and you leave the heated grips on, kill your battery, of course. So in this particular bike, right here on the harness, there is an accessory plug. There's a black wire for ground and an orange wire with a white tracer. That's your key on power source. So that's the best way to plug this in. Get a key on power source. You don't want a constant power source, because even if it's a wire in the harness that's constant power, you're gonna, you know, you could have potential of leaving the heated grips on and killing your battery. So I put a little tape on this. This is the positive one. I did it basically, I mean, everything's sealed and stuff. You can see I used these bullet connectors to make a connection. They're nice and tight. There's really no need to do this, but I did it just for security purposes and a peace of mind that that positive wire, you know, this connection will not come off and touch anything and arc anything out. You don't really have to do it to the ground, because if the ground touches the ground, it's just a ground, not going to do anything. But I'm going to do it to this anyhow, just to make sure that in the future, for some reason, shaking and rattling down the road, this doesn't bump loose, but it should not. It's on there very, very tight. So I crimp the ends here, and that's it. So You know, they all have a little fuse in here. So I'm gonna wrap up the wires, tuck them in here nice and neatly, secure them off to the side so that we'll be able to fit the headlight in there properly. And that's it basically. I mounted the mount for the control right here, and that's it. So almost done, getting there.